Welcome to the debut of North of the Boards, a hockey podcast that takes you around the NHL with a little sprinkle of Toronto Maple Leafs in the mix. We are presented by Jackpot City Casino. I'm your host, David Pagnotta, and I'll be joined every week by my co-hosts here, Anthony Stewart and Shawn Belle, two former NHL guys. And boys, we're going to be joined every week by other former NHLers who'll be guesting as part of the show, taking us behind the scenes then and now. So really excited about this. Welcome to the program. And be sure to subscribe to North of the Boards on YouTube. Smash that up button and leave your comments below, as we're going to read them in our mailbag segment every week starting next week. Boys, welcome. How we doing?
Doing fantastic. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I'm looking forward to this. I'm kind of nervous. Sharing the screen with you two beautiful gentlemen. Man.
Oh, wow.
Lucky.
Yeah, it just shows how small the hockey world is, right? Dave, I saw you at the Leaf game. I think it was last week or the week before that. And I was actually on, Belzy's local show too. So it just shows the ecosystem that we're in, and definitely excited to sort of be here with everybody now and get to talk some hockey north of the boards. It's amazing.
Yeah, excited for this one, definitely. Boys, we're already buttering each other up, so it's nice. It's going to be a nice flow.
The chirps will be coming. Don't worry.
Yeah, they're going to be flying soon.
I think we know each other well enough where we'll keep it PG. We'll keep it PG, definitely. We'll save it for the group chats afterwards. Boys, let's dive in. Toronto Maple Leafs, we'll start here in Toronto. The Leafs, boys, getting back on track and have been getting back on track for a little while. Stewie, let's start with you because you follow them a lot more closely. But your take on where they're at right now. Tough overtime loss against Detroit the other night, but they've been on the upswing. Now they're battling injury. How do you assess this team at this point?
Yeah, well, the sky was falling a little bit after yesterday's loss, but we know how it is in the big city of Toronto. But for me, they've made up a lot of ground that people thought that they weren't. There was talks, 2-3 weeks ago before their recent run that, this was a group that had to look at potentially selling off pieces in Bobby McMahon. Are they going to move a goaltender out? Are they going to maybe try to get some picks for Scott Lawton? But ultimately, what did they do? They went on the road, they won a bunch of games, and they're now 1 point out of the playoff spot right now. So again, it's tough when you give up points to division rivals. And, I believe out of their 7 or 8 games before the Olympic break, not a lot are against division opponents. So you have to go out there and win in regulation. But the positives. We're going to keep it positives in Leafland here. You're seeing Austin Matthews now, have 25 goals. He seems like he's getting back to his old ways and just putting the puck in the net. But there are some injuries. Dakota Joshua still out as well. Stolars as well. So for me, it's focusing on the positive. This is the group that is knocking on the playoff door, and a lot of people didn't think that they'd be doing this at this point of the season.
You mentioned some of the injuries, certainly. A little tidbit, I heard that Dakota Joshua is going to start skating in this next week. So the trajectory for him to come back before Olympics is still a little tight, but the fact that he's getting on ice looks like he'll be good to go after, or at least that's the goal, is once the Olympic break ends, after that point, he'll be back on the ice. We know Stolars is now, skating with the Marlies, trying to get back into it. We'll get into the goaltending for a second, but Bellsy, you play D. Their D-core in Toronto starting to get a little bit depleted. No Tanev, and it looks like he's done for the regular season anyway. OEL was injured right at the start of the game on Wednesday. He's going to miss a little bit of time. And now there's word that Brandon Carlo even, kind of tweaked something. So when it's this next man up mentality, which we see in game, how does that apply to like another game? Like, okay, we're down 3 guys. We don't have the deepest NHL caliber decor. We've got some of the younger guys to step in. How does that affect from a defenseman perspective? Where's your mind going into a game when you're a little bit depleted like that?
Well, I think as a defenseman, you're trying to figure out a way that you can still be an impact on the ice every single time you touch the ice. I mean, if you look at just the way guys have been, and maybe it's Troy Stetcher, and he's the easiest one for me because obviously he played in Edmonton. His role in Edmonton was considerably different than what it is in Toronto. And Stetcher's playing about 20 minutes right now with the Leafs, and he's done a good job of using his legs. He's making really smart first passes. He's logging a lot of ice time. And when you're those defensemen that are being put into those positions where you are going to end up logging a little bit more minutes, well, you simplify your game a little bit more because you know that at the back end of your roster, it's a little bit spotty. You can't guarantee a kid from the minors is going to come in and is going to knock it out of the park. And that's just not the reality for most cases. Every now and then it does happen, but you got to simplify your game because you know that you're going to log big minutes. So, taking that one extra risk to maybe go, rush the puck might not be in the cards. Just, moving pucks quickly, trying to get them up to your forwards, getting them up to Matthews, is a thing that you want to do so that now you're taking a little bit more pressure off the back end.
Yeah, there's a little bit of balancing act, right? That has to come into play when guys drop, and you want to be as healthy as possible because you want your best shot to win. But from the overall, Stewie, from the overall team side, like it's not like this is just happening all now. They've had to battle injuries for a good portion of the season. Obviously, Willie's out as well, and he's dealing with stuff. So, do you, when you're trying to put the puck in the net and you're trying to give your team a lead, like the other night, they only managed one against Detroit. But, to John Gibson's credit, he's been lights out. He's won 7 straight. He's been unbelievable in his last 18 games. But that aside, when you're trying to muster up offense and trying to create something, how do you try to not do too much where you put your team in a vulnerable position?
Well, again, I think Belsey can attest to this as well. When you never pray for an injury, right? But as guys that were third line, fourth line players and 4 to 6 defensemen, you wait for this opportunity, right? So, there's guys like, Easton Cowan and Robertson, guys that were on the outside looking in. Cowan was in the minors earlier in the season. Robertson couldn't buy a goal, or he's on the fourth line. Those guys are getting opportunities to show what they can do. So that competition, right, when they had the 13th, 14th forwards and guys were on the outside looking in, it pushes you to be better. So that as a group challenges you to be better. Michelli sat out for most of December before he came into his top 6 role. So that breeds that competition where you're going to be missing some of these goals and offense. Those guys elevating their game makes up the difference for that. But you can't feel sorry for the Toronto Maple Leafs. You look at the Florida Panthers, right? They're missing Sasha Barkov, one of the best two-way players in the league. They just got back Matthew Tkachuk after he's been gone for 3.5 months as well, too. There's injuries all around the league. Victor Hedman, everywhere you look, guys are missing 2, 3, 4 players, and sometimes it is your stars. So in Leafland, we know, Dave, we're up there. We're in the press box. We're seeing the whispers. There is no excuses there, and the expectations, and that's regardless, right, wrong, or indifferent, the expectations with this group that they have to make the playoffs and go beyond the first round. So that's the pressure. It comes with the territory of being in one of the biggest hockey markets in the National Hockey League, and I think Brad Treliving and co are going to be operating as such. This group is not going to be selling, and Dave's got his ears to the streets, and he knows what's going on. I bet you he knows what's going on with OEL. He won't tell the fans right now. He'll post it down the line, but again, they have high expectations, and the plan is to make noise come playoff time.
Just to add to that, you're looking at those guys that are the third line forwards, those fourth line forwards. They're trying to find ways to be everyday guys, and you hit the nail on the head, Stewie. Like Maselli, he sat out a bunch of games. Well, how do you earn the trust of the coach? What do you do when you're getting out there so that all of a sudden now instead of being an 8-minute guy, you can move to a 10-minute guy? And then from there, you can get to a 12-minute guy and consistently be a contributor in the lineup. And I think for, some of those guys that are coming up, some of the guys that are fourth line, bubble guys that are out of the lineup, well, it's playing I don't want to call it a safe style of hockey because I think that also gets you in trouble. But it's playing a mature brand of hockey and making sure that you're not turning over pucks at untimely, times throughout the game, because all that's going to do is gain the ire of your coach, and then you're going to end up back on the bench. So just finding ways to make sure that you're making the right play at the right time, and finding ways for that coach to gain some trust in you, that changes everything for a lot of those guys.
When you've got a hard-ass coach, and that's what look, Craig Berube is that. Like he's intense. but he's also like there's an understanding part of him as well. But how he was on the ice is very similar to how he is on the bench or behind the bench, and especially in the room. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind where these guys are getting chewed out, and he comes on the bench he's just like a little bit more jovial. But when you're dealing with that kind of coach, and you're in a position where there is vulnerability, in the lineup, whether it's guys depleted and next man up mentality, or we've lost a couple games, we got to get going here, but we don't want to grip our sticks too tight because our coach will grab us too tight. Like how do you navigate those waters in dealing with a coach that brings a lot of intensity?
Well, I think for me, I think it's different. Am I going? Who's going here?
Go ahead, Stewie.
You go.
No, I think it's a little bit different in Toronto, right? And again, I think it's I've had coaches that have been barking, and I go and I look at their hockey DB, and they got 20 games playing for the Kansas City Mavericks, right? So when it's Berube, you have a natural respect for a guy because he played in the National Hockey League, and he's not going to ask you to do anything he hasn't done himself. So there's that natural respect, right? So you could say, well, he's on William Nylander. He's not asking him to do anything that he hasn't done. Go to the net, play hard, change in a timely manner. So I think the players have that natural respect. But I'll tell you this. They went through that slide because they decided, hey, you know what? We're going to play our way. We're going to go out there and take long shifts, turn pucks over, not really play the game the right way. And he knows coming into this market that you can't be there barking every single day at every single guy because they'll just tune you out. Belzy, you've played with one guy or two guys that are a superstar. This team has 4, 5, 6 superstars where you can't just be coming over barking. I remember one time a coach kicked over a garbage can 4 times before November. By the 4th time, the guys were laughing and the coach is challenging guys to fights and all that. So it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it's specifically now with kids that are up and coming, they don't. So you got to find a way to get the message through. But I'll tell you this, there's that natural respect for Craig Berube because he's played the game and you're like, well, I don't really want to get into any confrontation with this guy because he usually settles them with his fists. So for me, guys are going to be playing hard regardless.
Yeah, I'm going to continue that statement. If you're a guy that's coming into the lineup and you look and hear what your coach is saying, the very first thing I would do is I would elite prospects him. And I would say, okay, I'm going to look at my coach. I'm going to understand what he's saying. And I'm going to say, I'm going to try to emulate what you did. Why? Because that's going to translate instantaneously. And he's going to be like, oh, this guy cares because he's playing hard and he's playing an honest brand of hockey and he's playing in your face. And listen, I don't follow the Leafs as closely as you guys do, obviously, because I'm in Edmonton. But that coach, I don't think he shies away from his message. I think he's very straightforward with what he expects and demands from his team. And if you're a guy that's coming in, and I talked about it earlier, well, you got to find ways to impact the game. And you're coming in, you got to play hard, you got to play tough minutes, you got to block shots, you got to do all those things. That's what's going to gain the trust of your coach because guess what? When he played, he did those things. Now, is it going to be a situation where you're going out and fighting like he used to? Well, the game's changed, and that necessarily doesn't happen as much anymore. But understand your coach, understand the message that's coming out of his mouth, and I think you'll probably gain quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that respect obviously goes a long way with your coach, with your teammates, with everything. We're going to dive into some of those stories that you guys have had a little bit later on in the show, but just sticking with the Leafs, we want to touch on their goaltending situation. And, Stolar's now in the A, but on a conditioning stint. He's not going to play. He's just going to have the regular reps at practice and try to get back into that mindset before jumping back with the Leafs, upon which they're probably sending Hildeby down so that he can maintain regular minutes. And then you've got Stolarz and Joseph Woll going back and forth. Woll played great the other night, even though they lost in OT. I'm guessing he's playing against Vegas. That's what it looks like. And we'll touch on Vegas in a second with Mitch Marner. But goaltending-wise, when you've got guys behind you, and look, all 3 of these guys have been great this season. Hildeby's been exceptional. In coming in, when you've got, whether it doesn't matter who, that guy behind you, how much easier or does it make it easier to play knowing that whoever's in net right now is just going to be able to do whatever needs to be done?
Well, it makes the difference, right? And with regards to the Toronto Maple Leafs, that was their bread and butter, the 1A, 1B split between Wall and Stolarz last year. And together, they haven't played any games as a group, right? And, I look at sort of it's obviously too early to do an autopsy on the season, but what happens if Hildeby didn't come in and do what he needed to do? Like, this team would be completely out of the playoff picture, right? So, again, it's, we're hearing whispers right now. Well, are they going to trade Stolarz? Well, they just, signed him to a multi-year extension. Why would they move him out at this point where they need these two guys? So, again, I like the way that they handled Hildeby. They didn't bring him in at the start. They sent him down to the minors to sort of get some refreshments, and then they brought him up, and he did his job. So, great job to the management in really managing that. But when you have 1-2 goalies that give you a chance to win, and that's what he's been doing, Joseph Woll, as of late, it just makes it easier. You can afford to maybe go and do that extra rush, or I'm going to hold on to it, or maybe I'm going to extend my shift a little bit more, knowing that your goalie, has your back, as opposed to, man, he's letting in the shot, first shot of every period, the last shot of the period's going in, they're scoring in the last minute. It really tightens the group, and it really, really affects your play. So, but again, we gotta be honest with the listeners here. They've been talking about the goaltending. Oh, they lost to Vegas. He let in 6. They let in 5 against Minnesota. The sky is falling. We got to be honest in saying that there are some whispers that, there might need to be some upgrading in Leafland with regards to being in between the pipes.
And Belsey, that might be a little later for this group. You're in Edmonton, as you said. You're in a market where goaltending has been the topic for years. They went out and made a change, and bringing Tristan Jarry. What have you seen in comparison to Toronto, where this season there's been more confidence, and everything that Stewie was mentioning in net, even though maybe later on they figure something else out. But Edmonton had to address their goaltending. What have you seen from these two different types of scenarios?
Well, I mean, they're eerily similar. I mean, you've got goaltenders in your organization, and here in Edmonton, everybody has been talking about the goaltending. Stuart Skinner, he's not able to handle it. Can Pickard come in and be the starting goaltender? Well, now you have Jarry, now you have Ingram and Pickard, and you have organizational depth. How many teams are looking for organizational depth, knowing that, okay, well, if my starter goes down, I have another guy that can come in and he can hold the fort down. That's an important thing in the NHL. You want to have solid goaltending, because if you don't, well, that's when you start to lose those games, and it's hard.
Yeah. Well, it's a tricky kind of way to go. Like, you don't want to do too much to bail out your goaltending. And you don't want to do too little to just rely on the guy behind you. Stewie, kind of like you were mentioning, like you can hold on to the puck a little bit longer, or you can dump something in, or you can do something else differently that maybe takes a few extra seconds. But you don't want to take for granted the fact that this guy's behind you, because you tick him off, and you don't want to do that with goalies. They're a different beast and a bit of a different breed, right? So you want to make sure that they're comfortable, but you also have to be comfortable as well. It's a bit of a two-way street, I guess.
It is, right? But you sort of look at where, Wall and Stolarz got into injury problems was volume, right? They were doing too many back-to-backs. They were playing too many games in a short period of time, where their body of work throughout their career showed that they weren't those types of goalies. So a lot of that is management from the coaching staff. But at the same time, you have to ride a horse, right? As a goaltender, they're going to say, I want to be able to play every game. As a goaltender, as a competitor, you want to play every single game. But I think that's maybe where they mismanaged it, where you knew it was a 1-2 punch. And obviously, for other reasons, Wall missed the beginning part of the season. But again, they rode Wall, they rode Stolarz, and that's part of the reason why they did get into some injury problems throughout the season. But I got a question. Again, I'm a co-host. I can ask some questions here, Peg.
Yes,
so
right. The
real question is, Toronto Maple Leafs, to get into the playoffs and make some noise, who is the number one? And the crazy part about that question is, I don't know. And I don't know if that creates a bigger problem, and the fans in Toronto don't know. But who do you think is going to be number one when the dust is all settled after the Olympic break?
Man, when Stolarz comes back, if he is the guy that we saw last season down the stretch, if he's the guy that we saw in spurts this year, I think you give it to him. Like, Joe's been great. Joseph Woll has been steady. he's had a couple ups and downs, as you mentioned, a couple extra goals here and there. Hildeby as well against that Utah game where they lost 6-1. But I think with Stolarz, that there's both guys, him and Wall, provide a bit of a calming presence, but Stolarz himself, just because of his size, I think brings a different type of attitude when you're playing against a goalie that's a lot bigger. And if he's playing at the level of which he's shown that he can play these last couple of seasons, I think that's the guy. But it's a short leash because you have Joseph Wall there. You can go back to somebody else and either maintain that same level of play or have it elevated between the pipes. So again, a lot of it's going to depend on how Stoli comes back and performs and how consistent that level of play is. And you're going to want to alternate. You're going to want to platoon these guys down the stretch, definitely, because you want them as fresh as possible for playoff time, assuming you're getting in. But boys, I think for me it would be Stolarz, but on a bit of a short leash.
And then, and I'm just trying to think now, is Hildeby waiver exempt? I know he did sign his 2-year extension. So, okay, so that solves that problem, right? But again, we've seen it in years past where sometimes goalies can be over marinating, right? So again, maybe you give Hildeby a couple more games before this All-Star Olympic break before you see what you have. But again, there's been whispers that they're potentially dangling one of these goaltenders. But as you mentioned, I think you need both. That 1-2 punch was the strength of this group last year, and I think they got to ride it. And you know what? Let Hildeby sit a little bit longer.
Yeah, I say ride this and figure that out in the offseason. That's a summer problem. If you're going to address your goaltending in some fashion, you deal with that in the summer because there may be additional options that don't present themselves now that may in June, July, August in terms of other teams. Mitch Marner is coming back to Toronto. Yeah, that guy. You guys hear about him? You heard of him? This is how nuts this whole situation is. I went to Vegas last week because the Leafs played Vegas in Vegas. It wasn't even like the actual return, but I was there for that one. There were a lot of Leaf fans actually in the stands. They started booing him a little bit in the first period when he started touching the puck, and then it subdued. He's back. He's playing this one. The guys talked about it after the game on Wednesday. They had a day off on Thursday, so that's why we got to ask them after the game. But he's back, and the reception I think we're all anticipating is going to be a little volatile. Like he'll have his tribute on the big screen, probably shed a couple tears, and then everyone's just going to go after him. I think. I don't agree with it, Belzy, but I think that's kind of what's going to happen. For a guy that's been there for as long as he was, to get booed on home ice because you wanted him out doesn't make sense to me. But how do you see this one?
Well, listen, being a guy that's on the outside looking in and just seeing on Twitter that he was getting booed in Vegas, I can't assume that it's going to be a nice warm welcome back. I got a feeling that. Yes, he's going to get his video because obviously he spent some time there, but I got a feeling it's going to be relentless and it's going to be all night long. I hope not, because he gave a lot for that organization and he's a solid player. Like, we've talked about it on our shows in the past where, hey, he's a 100-point guy. Did it work out in the playoffs as well as you would have hoped? Maybe not. You can argue that conversation, but he didn't necessarily want out. There was a lot of people that were pushing to the point where it became, okay, I probably should look other places. And he did. And he's doing a good job in Vegas. So I find it fascinating. I'm ready with my popcorn to sit down on the couch and watch it. But this is what my prediction is going to be. They're going to get the video out early. People are going to cheer. He's going to do his thing. And then from the minute that video is done, anytime he touches a puck, he's going to get booed.
Stewie, what do you think?
Well, Belzy, we need you flying in because I got the B painted on my chest. Pang's got his on the O. We need one more O. So can you please join us and we can have the trifecta ready for tomorrow? But again, and Dave, we sit up there in that press
Yep.
box, pretty much every home game, and you see the banners, right? You see the banners, and especially with the modern day banners, not one of those guys won a Stanley Cup. The Wendell Clarks, the Matt Sundins, like
Dougie.
the Doug Gilmour, like these guys are legends. They didn't win nothing. They didn't win a Stanley Cup, but they brought the honest effort every single night. They were accountable. They said, hey, we are upset, tremendously upset. I have to be better. We got to go. We bleed blue and white. And they took responsibility for the losses, where I think that is sort of the issue with regards to Mitch Marner. Tremendous player. I believe he should have resigned. I believe that the Leafs would obviously welcome him back in open arms. But again, this comes with the territory of being gods in Toronto. You have to deliver. And ultimately, he did not deliver. And he plotted his exit outside in going to Las Vegas. But for me, he deserved every right to exercise his right as an unrestricted free agent. But
Yep.
to be able to be one of those guys where if he stuck around for another 2-3 years to be on the banner, I think he made the decision to say, you know what, I'm getting out of town before the going gets a little bit too tough. And they instead of coming to outside my house, they're going to start coming in my house. So I understand why he left. And he's saying, you know what, the heat is too much. I'm going to go into Vegas and be in obscurity where you can go to the local root beer shack and have a root beer. No one comes up to you and throws a tomato at you or questions you about the power play. But again, for me, that's the one thing that I regret. I regret not playing in a market like Toronto, Montreal, where there was that accountability. I had a player, I had a media member come up to me, hey, did you know you didn't score in 30 games? I'm like, no, thanks for the reminder. I guess I got to score tonight. I wish I had that accountability to be better, because if you win in a Canadian market, Dougie Gilmour and Wendell Clark, they don't have to buy a beer. They haven't bought one beer since 1995. That legend status means the most. And I think he made the decision, hey, I don't want to be that guy.
Stewie, is it, I got a couple things. Do you think it's more just of the commentary that he had that really set people off? Because his game was his game. He had ups and downs, but, like I mentioned earlier, he was a 100-point guy. And those guys don't just grow on trees. So do you think it was just the commentary that set people off and started to really question him?
Yeah, I think it is, right? And I try not to be critical of players that were better hockey players than me, and he's better twice on Sunday than me in any sense of the word. But for me, it was those comments, right? It was, well, what happened? Well, we just didn't get the pucks in deep. Where you look at some of the stars, right? You saw Connor McDavid, like, it's not good enough, be screaming about the accountability, but he would go out there and back it up every single night. It was about me. It wasn't deflecting. It was standing there in front of the cameras. Like, for me, I would be on the media tour. Hey, I'm in Vegas right now. Hey, not ducking the media, not, answering those questions. So again, I know they're going to cut this clip and be like, Anthony Stewart's got something against Mitch Marner, but again, someone that's been there and lived it, that accountability. And I played with, some superstars in the league, and Eric Stahl, and after every game, he wouldn't be talking about his teammates or the coaching or the system or the power play. It'd be like, I got to be better. I got to be the go-to guy. I didn't get it done. We didn't get it done. And we have to find a way. Not, well, you know what? We're gods, and you know what? I don't feel like being a god anymore. I'm out of here. I'm going to go live amongst the sinners in Sin City.
Oh boy. Just quickly, Dave.
Yeah.
Stewie, I know you mentioned that you're like, I kind of wish I was part of it. I played in Edmonton. I played in Montreal, and it's tough because I remember vividly we were out in Montreal one night, and it was after we lost. They went on a Western road swing. I think they played Vancouver, they played Calgary, and I think they played Edmonton maybe. And then I got called up and we played against Colorado. And we lose that game in OT, and the puck actually goes off my skate. Actually, it wasn't OT. It was regulation. It was 3-2. Puck goes off my skate. I'm pretty sure that was a game winner. Boxing a guy out. So we go out. We have the day off on Sunday, and people are coming up to us, and they're like, hey, are you guys ever going to win a game? And I'm like, I'm trying not to be super sarcastic, but I'm like, well, we just lost 4. So, I mean, there's 78 more. I hope so. But so like, it's a give and take scenario where it's, you go out, you're part of the city, you're trying to bleed for that city, and you want to have a little bit of peace and quiet. But at the same time, when you're part of these meccas, these hockey meccas, you know that you're not necessarily going to get that. So it comes with the territory. And the part of the reason why I asked was at the commentary. Well, because it comes with the territory, and you start throwing comments where you're gods, you're putting yourself really out there to really get criticized. And so that's kind of, where I tried to link the two situations.
But I wish I had that pressure, Bellsy, and it's going back to World Juniors when we played, 04, and we played the 2 years. The first year we lost to the Americans, right, where we crapped the bed, right? We lost in the third period, and then we had that accountability, but the weight of the country on us to go the next year and win. And I'm not sure if you remember, Brent Sutter pulled me aside and said, I'm going to cut you, Stewie. You're not scoring any goals. And what could I have done? Well, I was the leading scorer last year. And I said, you know what? You're not putting me in a scoring role, Sutsy. Put me in a scoring role and I'm going to score. He's like, well, if you don't score, I'm going to cut you. I said, okay. And I took that pressure is a privilege, and turned that into another great performance, right? So again, I was in that Southeast Division in the Carolinas and the Floridas, where in the Atlantas, where, we're out there doing the dirty bird with Little John and the East Side boys, right? Where I wish I had someone said, Stewie, you got to get your act together, because you know how it is in the big leagues. It's easy to get complacent there, but I wish I wasn't going to the rink in short sleeves and bucket hats and Speedos and going golfing and all that. I had that accountability of someone walking up to me. I don't like it now when I'm walking through Scotiabank Arena and someone says, hey, you picked Jack Campbell to win the Vezina 2 years ago. You stink. I don't like that part, but as a player, I welcome that pressure.
No, I do remember those days when we got off that plane from Finland, and I pointed at this National Post, because this is the one that we won. And where it's like, it's our team picture. But the year before, nice. I remember it was like, these guys are choke artists. I remember that very vividly. And luckily for me, I ended up going to Tri-City where I got away from it. But for a lot of you guys that were in Canada, like I think it was pretty relentless for a couple weeks. So I get where you're coming from. It does keep you honest. It makes you want to be better. So, yeah, there's good and bad when it comes to being part of hockey meccas.
I like how we did this, boys, because we're going to do this segment every week with, we're going to do Hell's Bells with you, Shawn, and then, and we're going to do, the same kind of thing with you, What's Stewing, and we're going to get those types of topics every week. So I like how we pivoted a little bit. I was going to dive into that, but the story about the fans coming after you after losing, Bellsy is awesome, and then Stewie, like these are the stories that we're going to bring here. From the World Juniors, across the NHL, and all the guests that we're going to be bringing on, get some of their stories and behind-the-scenes stuff too. So we dove into that, which was awesome. We got those segments, What's Stewing, Hell's Bells, every week here on North of the Boards. Boys, we're going to shift a little bit away from the Toronto Maple Leafs and dive into some of the topics around the National Hockey League. All right, guys, let's play some slots. Let's get into the action. Let's go Wendell Clark style, because I had an opportunity to hang out with him for a good week. He brought me to his place. He's got the rink in his barn. Really awesome guy. I actually was doing some work with him and just got to see just how much this guy truly resonates with the Toronto fan base, not just from what he did in 93. His whole career with the Maple Leafs, he had a little stint on the island, came back. This is a guy who absolutely fully embraces what it means being a true powerhouse hockey player. Just seeing how he interacts away from the game, just a wholesome dude, loves the game, invites guys over to play at his barn as well. For me, it was just a really cool experience to hang out with a guy like that. Hope to share more of these stories as we go. Oh, look at this. Here we go. We got some big action up on this one. We're spinning. We got a couple of options here. Again, just got to say, Wendell Clark, just money. Absolute money guy. We cash in 51 here. Let's get back to the show in a bit. I'm going to keep this going as well a little bit later on. Remember to head over to jackpotcity.ca. Jump in on some of this action too. All right, so the New York Rangers a week ago decided to drop Letter 2.0. And it's had some mixed reviews. They did this a number of years ago under a different regime. It was taken differently then. It was embraced. And then they won the draft lottery, and then they signed Artemi Panarin, and the rebuild kind of just disappeared. This time it's a retool. I want to get your perspectives first on just from the player side. you're seeing your team doing this, Stewie, and what would be your reaction to your team just being like, well, we're going to punt the season and we're going to be making some moves and we're going to shake everything up?
Oh no, we suck again, right? It's very, very discouraging, right, as a player, right? And I'll tell you this: my brother got traded to the Buffalo Sabres when they were like literally trying to tank. I think they ended up getting Jack Eichel or something like that. And he had no idea that was part of it. And like the media was literally laughing at him. And they're like, yeah, the plan's to make the playoffs. And they're laughing. He's like, what are you laughing about? As a hockey player, you want to be competitive. You have the expectations of going in and making the playoffs and having success. I remember reading the games notes every single night against who I was playing. And I'm like, you know what? Sidney Crosby's only ahead of me by 43 points tonight, but I'm going to have a better night tonight than him. So in my mind, I was the better player. Obviously, that was not the case. But you are a true competitor. So as the team to say and the management say, well, yeah, this group is not good enough. You know, for me, I think that's unacceptable as a player. And what makes it even more disappointing, you have a world-class goaltender in Shesterkin. You have some world-class players, one of the best wingers in Panarin, Zibanejad scoring goals, 10 goals in his last 10 games as well. So you have the pieces, goaltending, top-end defense, high-end scoring. How is this not good enough? Right. Yeah. So I think it has a top-down trickle effect where I think as a group, you're sort of like, yeah, we don't really believe in this group. And the players are like, well, if they don't believe in us, why should we? You know what? I'm going to play my way off the island, or I'm going to get off the island. So for me, I think it's something brewing behind the scenes where you're trading a Trouba, you're trading Hedel and all these other guys over the last couple of years. JT Bell, it's crazy what they've been doing there, because this was a team that was President's Trophy winners and Stanley Cup contenders as early as 2 years ago, to be now writing a letter to the fans. And that's what makes it worse. You think Toronto fans are bad, and the Oilers fans, New York, they'll come and they'll write notes, they'll come to your house, they'll send you a telegram letting you know their feelings. So I think that's just adding fuel to the fire in the Big Apple there too, and we'll see how they change things around. But for me, this group is way too talented, and to tell me out of those Tri-City teams that New York is out of the mix, I'm shocked and I'm baffled.
The thing that bothers me the most about it, because there's going to be teams that go from, being contenders to, I want to be a contender for Gavin McKenna or Keaton Verhoff or whoever those top prospects are. It's going to happen every single year. And I understand fully that there is elite level talent on that team. But the thing that bothers me the most about the whole situation is that you wrote a letter. Drury needs to come out, and he needs to get in front of the fans, and he needs to be able to have some accountability, which is something we touched on a little bit earlier with the Leafs. Have some accountability for the direction that you want to take this team. Once again, you're the New York Rangers. You can make whatever decision you want to make for your team. But when you have these players and you got guys that, in my opinion, maybe you're 3-4 players away from getting back to being a Stanley Cup contender. But if you want to make that decision, fine. But you better get in front of that microphone and say, hey, this is the direction that we want to take the Rangers. Have the ability for people to now question what's going on. And now it's direct accountability, and it's coming out of your mouth, as opposed to, I'm going to hide behind a letter. So that's the one thing that I didn't really care for. It just shows, I don't want to say it's that you're hiding or you're like classless or anything like that. It's just, to me, it's like you're almost taking the easy way out.
Well, Bellsy, and Stu, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but Shawn, like from you're in the room. What do you think the communication is between the guys? Like, yes, you want to compete. Yes, you want to win. Nobody wants to lose. But now this comes out, and Panarin's going to get traded. And it looks like Soucy's going to get traded. There's a lot of interest in Trocheck. Lafreniere's name's out there. Like, this could be 4, 5, 6 guys on this team right now that aren't on the team at the start of next season, at least. So with this all happening, what's the messaging in the room? Like, how are guys communicating and having to deal with this with one another? Do you guys are you talking in the room? Are you waiting until the drive home? Are you getting together at guys' places and being like, all right, let's powwow and figure out what the hell's going on? Like, how does that work?
You're probably not going to do it in the room, because when you get into the room, it's time for business and you take care of what you need to. But, there's a lot of conversations that happen behind closed doors, and, guys will go hang out with each other. They'll go for dinner, they'll go for lunch, and they'll have these conversations. And, for a guy that like Mika Zibanejad, who signed a big ticket, What are you saying now? Are you saying, okay, well, I want to be part of a rebuild? It's not like you're getting younger. You want to win. So you're probably having conversations saying, okay, well, if I'm seeing this direction happen now, can I get out as well so that I can have a chance at being a Stanley Cup winner? And I think those are the conversations that are going to happen behind closed doors. I don't think it's going to happen in the room because I do know that these guys are professionals. Yeah. And when you enter that building, you got to earn the salary that you have, and you want to do that because, like Stewie said, these guys are competitors and they'll do what they need to do. But behind closed doors, I don't imagine some of the big guys are happy about it. I don't imagine the guys that have recently signed big tickets are happy about it. And conversations are, okay, what's next for me?
Let's. We're getting short on time, but we're going to be doing this all week, every week, moving forward for the rest of the season. So pumped about that, boys. Pumped about the show. Excited to keep this going. Let's dive into Olympics quickly. A lot of injuries are piling up. The U.S. Olympic team announces a change in their roster. Seth Jones is not going to be able to play, so he's out. Jackson Lacombe has come in to replace him. A little bit of question marks surrounding why was it him and not Lane Hudson. And we know that there were. There's no Cole Caulfield on the U.S. There's no Jason Robertson on the U.S. A lot of controversy or arguments anyway for the Canadian team too. How come it wasn't Sam Bennett and whatnot? And Canada's dealing with some injuries too. So first of all, your reaction to Lacombe coming in for the U.S. We'll touch on Canada in just a second. But Stewie, let's start there.
Well, there's a theory. There's a theory out there, and again, I'm not an insider. I play one on TV that. Bill Guerin, I call it the extra medium jersey theory, where he has a bias against guys that are smaller than a large jersey, right? So, you're looking at the Caulfields and the Lane Hudsons. They're not quite a large. They're bigger than a medium, so they're extra medium. So their jerseys are just a little bit too small. So for me, you see Caulfield, the goal he scores the other night. He has got the one-shot game breaker. That's the goal that gets you over the top, against Canada and the Four Nations. But again, I respect Bill Guerin. I respect his expertise. And this was a team that he built that was one shot away from winning the Four Nations. So I understand the loyalty. I understand bringing back all those guys. But how do you leave off a Cole Caulfield? How do you leave off a Jason Robertson, who's amongst the league goal scorers the last couple of years, and putting the puck in between the net? You see that goal he scored, top shelf? I can't even do that. What's going on here? And the same thing now with Lane Hudson, just the game breaker. So I understand he has a flavor. He has a certain spice that he wants to build his teams with. But again, sometimes the talent just bleeds through. And for me, I'm big, strong, heavy style hockey. That's what I played. That's how I tried to coach. But now that I'm coaching, I see some of these younger players. They have so much skill that it's undeniable. And those are three players in the league: Robertson, Caulfield, and Hudson. You cannot deny their skill. And it might come back to bite them in the butts. We'll see. But they're very, very talented. But also I respect in him going with the bigger, stronger, faster players.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Is that they were one goal away from, potentially winning the Four Nations. And if you're Bill Guerin, you say, this is a formula that I want to go back to. Because if you remember, there was this defenseman who happened to be a left-handed shot, who was a little bit smaller, who was out of your lineup, that could be potentially a game breaker. His name's Quinn Hughes. And so if you got this guy now sitting in your lineup, could he be the guy, the catalyst to get you over the hump? And so for Bill Guerin, once again, I can't go out there and question what he does, because obviously you took your team and you built that team to, a goal short, and now you've added one of the best defensemen in the league. So do you need to go out now and get a Lane Hudson when you already have Quinn Hughes? So, there's those things, and because up here in Edmonton, and I know Edmonton's a little bit biased around Bouchard, but the conversation was, who's going to run your power play if Cale Makar gets hurt? Well, Evan Bouchard's one of the best, offensive guys in the league, but do you want them both on the team at the exact same time? It's kind of the same question if you have Hudson and Hughes. They're the same player for the most part. Obviously they do different things, but that would be kind of the one thing where you sit back and say, we don't need both of those guys. The other two players, I got to rebut and completely agree.
You've been to Mandarin, Belsey, right?
Sorry, say that again.
I said, you've been to Mandarin, the restaurant Mandarin, right? You've been there, right?
Nope.
So at the end, you go and you get your dessert,
Yeah.
right? So obviously, you're probably like me. You get your waffle and you put your ice cream on top of it. Do you say, well, this is an abundance of sweets here, and do you really pass that eclair, or do you pass that brownie? No, you grab that extra. You can never have too many Quinn Hugheses or Lane Hutsons, so you can't just be like, well, I already got this guy. Remember, there's going to be 2-3 players that are not dressing, and there's injuries. There's guys that are sick. There's sickness going around. I coach a minor hockey team. Everyone's been sick. Right? So to say, well, we got Quinn Hughes, we're going to leave Lane Hutson, who's amongst league leaders in assist and defense assist in his second year, that's a talent that's undeniable.
But you know that they're having those conversations. And so that's the reality of it, is that, like, I don't disagree with you. Lane Hutson's an unbelievable talent. And I think, he should probably he should be on a team. But once again, they're having these conversations. Like, you can't take the old school out of old school. And so when you have a Quinn Hughes and he's sitting there, you're like, okay, that was the guy that we needed to get us over the hump. And when you look at that roster from an American standpoint, like, where are the holes? And so that's what they're thinking in their mind, is like, guys, we're one away and there's not many holes, because on paper, you could argue that the Americans might be a better team than the Canadians. You can.
But I know, sorry, Pangs. I know, Pangs, we got to talk. We got to run. We're going to have a quick poll here, and I know the answer to this. Brock Nelson, would you have picked him to be on this team if you're Billy G? Yes or no?
Ooh, that's a good question.
For me, yes.
Is that before he went on the recent run? He scored a bunch of goals in the last 3 weeks. When they made that decision, would you have done it at the time?
No.
Thank you. I watch all the games too. It's my job as well. I know.
Yeah. No, it would, for me, the two biggest question marks for me on the U.S. team that made it were Brock Nelson and JT Miller. And Brock got going, like you said. The last 3 weeks, he's been stellar. JT Miller is still kind of like one of these for me. And that's where maybe the stubbornness of loyalty kicks in. Like, he's a great player, and like let's not take that away from him. But just how he's performed this season. Like, I look at Canada, not having Sam Bennett on the team. Sam Bennett did not have a good October and November, like, at all. He was just not producing. He wasn't doing the little things that he normally does. And by the time he got going, there was still enough runway. There was still like 3 weeks before, or 4 weeks through, whatever it was, before Canada solidified and announced their roster. But it was almost like too little, too late. Like, they've gone in a different direction already. They brought in Tom Wilson. They brought in Celebrini. They brought in Suzuki. They brought in some other pieces. And that runway just wasn't long enough for him to get back on track. I haven't seen that with JT Miller this season, where he's fully gone back on track. And I get it. To both your points, they were a goal away. They were a shot away from winning the Four Nations. So you want to stick with that, and then you get Quinn Hughes back, and he wasn't even part of it. So I get that. It's tough. It's tough to make both of these countries could probably put out 2 rosters, and we'd be like, damn, those are pretty good. So I get it from that side of things. Just quickly on Canada, they've got injuries. Sorelli, Point, a couple other guys are battling. Hopefully, for them, everything comes back. Sweden's missing a bunch of guys. Finland's missing a bunch of guys that are hurt now. But from Canada's side of it, is there, because Doug Armstrong talked about grouping, like, this caliber player, we've got a couple backups. This type of player, we've got a couple backups. If Sorelli and or Point are out, who's next man up for you guys? Belzy, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm gonna start this conversation with agreeing with.
Don't say Hyman. You're going Hyman.
No, I'm not. I'm going to start it by.
I thought that too.
Going with what Stewie said, where you want the best player available, and once again, Robertson, Caulfield out of the lineup. I want to see guys that have an immense amount of talent. Like, one of the first guys, and I was personally surprised by it, but was Scheifele. Like, why is he left off the roster? That's a really good hockey player and a very exceptional talent, having a pretty good year. Yeah, the team is down, but I'm curious to know, like, what can he do when he's playing, with some of these other high-end upper echelon players in the league. Like, that's the one for me right out of the gates where I sit there and go, that's an interesting one. Why can't he be on that hockey team? And there's no disrespect to Cirelli and some of these other guys. Like, I get it. I know why they're on the team, but
yeah,
Scheifele to me deserves to be on that team. Bennett, he's been a game breaker. Like, he's a game breaker in big games. I would have the conversation of saying, can he work his way back into it? He's starting to heat up. So maybe those two guys, but for the most part, I don't think Hyman is the guy or the answer. And trust me, here in Edmonton, everybody's talking about Hyman being the guy that's going to ride shotgun to McDavid. But yeah, Scheifele and maybe Bennett.
Well, Dave knows why Scheifele's not on the team, but we'll see. We'll save that for the insider segment down the line, on another day. If they win or lose, if they lose, we could say why. But if not, well, but anyways, that's neither here nor there.
That's much later down the road. Yeah.
This is not an insider show. But anyway,
sometimes secrets are good to be kept.
That's
true.
I know. I made that up. I
Yeah.
made that up. Dave doesn't know nothing. But for me, I think it has to be Sam Bennett, right? This is the guy that, you saw him play his way off the island in Calgary, rejuvenate his career, and elevate the game when it matters most, and that's in the playoffs, right? Comes in, wins a Conn Smythe, wins 2 Stanley Cups, and he scores, big game-breaking goal in the Four Nations, right? And I used to train with a Joel Ward in the summer. It's a similar mentality where, it's in the beginning of the summer. We're starting training in May, and he's missing a couple days in a row. I was like, guys, it's only May. Then it ramps up June, July. Still taking it easy. We start skating mid-July, August. He's still like, it's not even like we're about to go now to training camp, and that's when he sort of starts turning it on. But he's still saying, you know what? It's not even September yet. I'm still going to take it easy. But come playoff time, Joel Ward was going to perform. So he would literally take it a little bit easy until the games matter most. And that's what Sam Bennett has done, right? He struggled obviously early in the season. And remember, he had to be the go-to guy without Tkachuk and without Barkov. That takes time. He is a number 2/3. He's not a 1/2 centerman. So for him to figure it out on his own and still produce, I believe he's there. And he has that factor, right? He does not back down. He's going to be in a corner with the Tkachuk brother and go head on and not sort of back out. So I understand the Bedard argument. And remember, I believe him and Celebrini were probably at the conversation on, hey, we're not sure who it's going to be. And Celebrini went and made it undeniable. So I think for that, Sam Bennett, Celebrini's a lock. Celebrini, I think, could be a potential MVP of the tournament. You heard it here first. And if I'm wrong, please contact me at Shawn Belle, but he's going to have a big tournament.
I love it, boys. What a first show. I love it. This has been fantastic. North of the boards here with Shawn Belle, Anthony Stewart, Dave Pagnotta. We're going to bring this to you every week, talking Leafs, talking NHL, talking Olympics coming up. Be sure to go and subscribe to North of the Boards on YouTube. Give us a thumb up button as well and leave some comments. We'll get to your comments every week in our mailbag. This has been a lot of fun, boys. For Bellsy, for Stewie, I'm Dave. We will catch you next week here on North of the Boards.